unaware his wife was about to take over the company he worked for. Husband kicked her out to marry his rich billionaire boss. What she did next left him homeless. He didn't just end the marriage quietly. He dragged his wife's suitcase to the front door of their modest home, threw it down like it was a pile of junk, and told her she didn't fit the life he was stepping into, while the neighbors watched from behind half-open blinds. That evening, Emily Parker stood frozen in the doorway, her fingers gripping the handle of the suitcase Daniel had packed for her. Her husband, Daniel, stood in the middle of the living room in a perfectly pressed suit, his eyes colder than she had ever seen them. "Victoria wants me by her side now," he said. "She says I need a partner who matches my future. You don't." Outside, the soft hum of a waiting limo engine filled the quiet street. Two kids on bikes slowed down at the sidewalk. An elderly neighbor pretended to water her plants while staring. Curtains shifted as people peeked out, pretending not to watch a woman being pushed out of her own home. Daniel thought he was trading a small life and a quiet wife for power, luxury, and a future built in glass offices and penthouse views with his rich billionaire boss. He thought Emily would disappear into the background, embarrassed and forgotten. What he never knew was this. Just days before he kicked her out, Emily had sat in a private boardroom, signing documents that would make her the new head of Alden Industries, the very company where he worked so hard to impress Victoria. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what happens when the person everyone pities at the front door is actually the one holding the keys to everything. Dear viewers, if you're still here, don't just watch and scroll. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The office phone rang 3 times before anyone reacted, but Emily Parker, 32 years old, already had the receiver to her ear, her voice steady, calm, and full of quiet authority. The intensity of the room clashed with her softness. Papers shuffled, managers argued in low, frustrated tones, and someone panicked about a client deadline. But Emily stayed composed, handling every crisis thrown at her like a woman who carried a lifetime of storms on her back. She wasn't born into comfort. She wasn't born into money. Her strength came from a childhood where nothing was handed to her. Emily Parker, assistant operations manager at Alden Industries, sat at her mid-sized office desk, surrounded by files she had already finished hours before. Her space was neat in a way that suggested discipline, not perfectionism. Her computer screen showed 3 unread urgent messages, yet her face held no stress. She breathed slowly, methodically, like someone who had learned long ago that panic never solves anything. She was the kind of woman people trusted even before they knew her name. But there was more to Emily than her coworkers ever understood. Behind her calm smile lived a long history few people knew, one shaped by sacrifice and silent endurance. She had grown up in a small apartment with a mother who worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs. Emily learned early how to fix broken appliances, balance grocery money, and stretch a single meal into 2 days. She became the caretaker at home long before she became one in her marriage. Her mother's voice still lived in her memory. "Stability doesn't come from luck, Emmy. It comes from the hands that refuse to give up." Emily had taken those words everywhere, into her job, into her marriage, into every decision she made, and now into a future she never imagined would come so fast. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a private number. She recognized it instantly, one of the dedicated board lines that almost never called staff directly. She quietly answered, "Hello?" A composed male voice said, "Emily, it's Gregory Miles. Your onboarding packet for the transition will be ready by next month. Legal wants to finalize the documents in person before we schedule the public announcement." She froze, only for a second, just long enough for the weight of those words to press into her chest. Transition. The word hung in the air like an unopened secret. "Thank you, Mr. Miles," she whispered, though her tone carried unease. "I'll be ready." To anyone listening, it sounded like a normal operations update. No job title was mentioned, no CEO, no succession, just transition. She ended the call quickly before anyone noticed her tremble, because no one here, not a single person, knew that Emily was about to step into a role that would change the entire company. And her husband? He had no idea that the woman he came home to every night had been chosen by the founder and the board for something far greater than either of them had ever planned. She placed the phone down gently, but her eyes were distant, troubled, almost sad. Daniel Parker, her husband, 35 years old, charismatic, handsome, always craving approval, walked into her office without knocking. Daniel worked in the same company as a mid-level analyst in the strategy department. People liked him, admired his confidence. But Emily knew the truth. Underneath his charm lived deep insecurity, a fear of being ordinary, a need to feel important. And whenever life got too heavy, it was Emily who lifted him. "Em, you won't believe this," he said breathlessly, excitement shaking in his voice. Emily closed a file and looked up with a soft smile. "What happened?" Daniel tossed a thick folder onto her desk. It hit the wood with a sharp smack, loud enough to make her flinch. "Victoria wants me in her private strategy group," he announced, chest puffed out. His eyes were glowing with pride. This could change everything for us. Victoria Hale, his boss, a glamorous billionaire CEO known for her ruthless business style, was a name Emily never expected to hear spoken with that much excitement. Emily's face went still, not jealous, not angry. Something darker, something closer to recognition. As if a memory long buried had crawled back into the light. A memory of a woman who once told her, "I don't give opportunities, I give tests." Daniel didn't catch her reaction. He was too busy glowing in the shadow of another person's power. Emily had met Victoria once before, and she knew the woman never gave opportunities without wanting something in return. As Daniel waited for her praise, Emily's eyes drifted toward the door, because what was coming next would tear their world in half. Somewhere down the hallway, the elevator chimed, announcing the arrival of someone Emily hoped she would never cross paths with again. The conference room door burst open with a sharp, startling force. Papers flew, chairs shifted, and voices instantly dropped to silence. Victoria Hale, 45 years old, billionaire CEO of Alden Industries and Daniel's powerful boss, strode into the room like she owned every heartbeat inside it. Her heels struck the floor with fierce confidence. Her presence felt like a storm that demanded attention, respect, and fear all at once. The sudden intensity was enough to make even Daniel's breath hitch. About an hour after the elevator chime outside Emily's office, she now stood near the doorway of the main conference room, holding her folders tight, trying to blend into the background. But Victoria's aura soaked into every corner. It was impossible not to feel it. Victoria addressed her team with a voice that was sharp yet hypnotic. "We don't have room for mediocrity today. I expect brilliance, nothing less." She wasn't shouting. She didn't need to. Victoria Hale was the kind of woman whose quiet tone could silence entire rooms. But beneath that polished surface, something darker moved. Something predatory, like a lion watching the herd, deciding which one to pull away. As Daniel straightened his tie, trying to look confident, Emily watched Victoria's eyes drift over the team, then land on him, for a moment too long, and suddenly the room's tension shifted, bending itself around Daniel like invisible arms pulling him closer. Victoria's lips curved into the smallest smile. "Daniel Parker," she said smoothly. "Your analysis yesterday was sharp. Impressive work." Daniel stood taller, pride rising in him like heat. Emily, standing behind him, felt a coldness instead, because she knew that compliment was not about professionalism, not with the way Victoria's gaze traveled. Slow, assessing, intrusive. And Emily recognized that look. She had once been the quiet intern in Victoria's office years ago. She had seen how Victoria picked people apart, how she tested them, shaped them, used them. A memory crashed back so suddenly it felt like she was pulled into it. Emily, then only 22, shy, eager to learn, carefully handed Victoria a stack of reports. Victoria looked her over, not the papers, her. Then she spoke with a cold, cutting certainty. "Weak men crumble under pressure. Strong women thrive in silence." Emily remembered how those words chilled her, even though she didn't fully understand them back then. But now, watching Daniel glow under Victoria's attention, she finally understood. Victoria wasn't just complimenting Daniel. She was testing him. She was choosing where to press. The meeting continued, But Emily's mind raced beneath her calm expression. Victoria asked Daniel more questions than anyone else. She stood closer to him each time. She praised his every answer like she was feeding his ego on purpose. Daniel's confidence bloomed right before Emily's eyes, and he didn't even notice the trap. But Emily did. Whenever Daniel looked unsure, he glanced back at Emily. Habit, comfort, dependence. Every time she nodded, reassuring him, Victoria's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Almost like she didn't like the fact that Daniel leaned on his wife for strength. And suddenly the puzzle pieces began to shift inside Emily's mind. Victoria wanted power. Victoria wanted control. Victoria always tested the limits of those around her. So what did she want from Daniel? Emily felt a slow dread crawl through her chest. Later, when the meeting ended, Emily stayed back to gather the leftover papers. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but she didn't need to. The conference room had emptied out. Only she and Victoria remained. Victoria stepped into the corner of the room with her phone. Emily froze when she heard the first line. The succession announcement will blindside all of them. Her breath caught. Succession? Of who? She dared a tiny step closer, hiding behind a tall cabinet as she stacked files. Victoria's tone dropped lower, sharp and sure. They'll never see it coming, especially him. Emily felt her pulse spike. Especially him. Who was him? Daniel? Another executive? Or someone else entirely? She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Victoria hung up, her expression unreadable. Then she walked out without looking back. Emily stood alone in that silent room, heart pounding so hard she felt lightheaded. Because she knew one thing for certain. Victoria Hale never said anything without meaning all of it, and whatever was coming was going to change everything. Emily looked down and realized her hands were trembling because she suddenly remembered her own confidential phone call from earlier that day, the one about her transition, the one the board wanted Victoria kept outside of. The moment Emily stepped into the small conference room, the tension snapped through the air like a tight wire ready to break. A stack of thick documents lay on the table, stamped with bold red text. Confidential, authorization required. The two men already inside turned sharply toward her, their expressions serious, alert, almost urgent. The first man was Gregory Miles, 58 years old, senior board member of Alden Industries. He was respected, cautious, and known for protecting the company like a father protects a child. The second man, Thomas Reed, 61, was the chief legal officer. He had eyes that missed nothing. Both men stood when Emily entered. Ms. Parker, Gregory said, we need your signature on several items. Mr. Alden wants everything finalized before the public update. There it was, that intensity again, that heavy pressure that came with secrets not meant for ordinary ears. Emily sat down slowly, her heart buzzing with a mix of fear and responsibility. Her hand hovered over the first page, and for a moment she couldn't move. Because this was the moment she had kept hidden for so long. As she picked up the pen, the room's energy shifted, quiet, heavier, almost sacred. Before this day, Emily had never allowed herself to truly absorb what she was stepping into. She remembered the day Mr. Alden, the founder of Alden Industries, first noticed her potential. She had been only 27 back then, still new, still unsure, still believing that success belonged to louder, more confident people. Mr. Alden, now in his late 60s and retired, saw something different, something deeper. He had called her into his office one morning and said, "Talent can be trained, integrity can't. You have both, Emily. This company needs someone like you." He became her mentor. Not openly, he didn't want jealousy or whispers, but he watched, advised, guided, and shaped her into someone the board could trust. Because of her operations role, he quietly asked her to learn more than her job required: internal reporting systems, expense trails, performance metrics. Emily became one of the few people in the company who could read the numbers and understand what they really meant. Years later, when his health began to fail, he made a private decision, one only the board and legal team knew. Emily Parker would succeed him, not because of her name, not because of wealth, not because she demanded it, but because she had earned it with every quiet sacrifice. Every late night, Every problem she solved while others argued. She never bragged about this, not even to Daniel, because the board ordered strict confidentiality until the formal announcement. Even the outgoing CEO was no longer involved. Victoria knew a succession was coming. She had been told only that the board would decide, but not who they had chosen. Gregory gently pushed the documents closer. "You've worked hard for this, Ms. Parker. Don't look so nervous." Emily swallowed. "I'm not nervous, just overwhelmed." Thomas folded his hands. "Mr. Alden trusted you. We trust you. That's why this transition is yours." Transition, the same word she had heard earlier on the phone. She signed the first paper, the second, the third. Every signature pulled her further into a future she had never expected. But the rising tension inside her wasn't from fear. It was from Daniel, her husband, who had no idea he was married to the woman chosen to lead the company he worked for. And Victoria, his influential boss, had no idea either. Emily looked up. "This is dangerous timing. Victoria's getting closer to Daniel. I can see it." Gregory exchanged a glance with Thomas. "Which is why," he said slowly, "you must keep this confidential until the announcement. Not even employees should know, understand?" Emily nodded, though a knot formed in her chest. "Not even Daniel," Thomas added firmly. "If anything happens around him or Victoria, your position must stay separate from it, for your protection and the company's." It wasn't an order meant to hurt her. It was protection. The very foundation of Emily and Daniel's marriage suddenly felt fragile. She finished the last signature and placed the pen down. Her hand shook slightly, betraying her calm exterior. Gregory opened a leather folder. "This contains your preliminary CEO transition briefing. You may review it at home through your secure portal, but remember, your access logs will be monitored. Use it carefully." Emily nodded, trying to steady her breathing. It explained why she had been given extra access to company systems lately. Expense reports, performance dashboards, deeper data than most managers ever saw. Her phone vibrated loudly on the table. She reached for it, expecting a message from her friend, or maybe a reminder. But when she saw the sender's name, her entire world tilted. Daniel. The message preview glowed on the screen. "Victoria invited me to her penthouse tonight. She says it's urgent, says it could fast-track my future." Emily's blood went cold. Her fingers tightened around the phone. Victoria. Penthouse. Urgent. Nothing about that combination felt innocent. She felt something inside her, something she had never felt before, twist into fear and warning. Thomas noticed the change in her expression. "Everything all right?" Emily tried to speak, but the words stuck in her throat, because deep inside she already knew. This was not work-related. This was not harmless. This was not something she could ignore. The cliffhanger struck like thunder. Victoria had made her first move, and Emily, now holding the documents that would change her life forever, knew the next move would be hers. Gregory's voice drifted softly as she walked out. "Be careful, Emily. Victoria doesn't like losing control." Daniel barely had time to steady his breath before the elevator doors slid open with a sharp metallic hiss. The intensity hit him immediately. Victoria Hale's penthouse was nothing like the office where he worked. It was a world built from cold money and dangerous temptation. Glass walls shimmered with city lights. Expensive paintings hung in perfect symmetry. Every object felt chosen, not just bought. Victoria, 45 years old, billionaire CEO, Daniel's boss, and the most commanding woman he had ever met, stood near a marble bar pouring whiskey into 2 crystal glasses. She didn't turn when he entered. She didn't need to. Her presence was magnetic enough that Daniel felt pulled toward her without a word. "Daniel," she said in a low velvet voice, "you're right on time." Her tone made his heart beat faster. He stepped inside, the door silently closing behind him like a trap sealing shut. His throat tightened with something he refused to call fear. Victoria handed him a glass filled with an amber drink that probably cost more than his monthly salary. "To potential," she said. Daniel lifted his glass, feeling suddenly powerful, wanted, important. But deep inside, beneath the pride swelling in his chest, a quiet voice whispered something he didn't want to hear. They sat on opposite ends of a long white sofa. Victoria crossed her legs slowly, elegantly. The room dimmed itself when she picked up a remote, shadows curling around the furniture. "You know," she began, her voice smooth as silk. "Men like you are rare." Daniel blinked. "Men like me? Men who think, men who rise, men who could be far more than what others limit them to." Her words struck him like warm sunlight, but her tone, her eyes, her smile, none of it felt purely about work. Victoria leaned closer. "Your analysis this week? Brilliant. The board noticed. I noticed." Daniel felt heat climb his neck. He tried to remain rational, but flattery like hers was dangerous. Too precise, too focused. "You deserve someone," she paused, "who sees your potential clearly, someone who isn't threatened by it." The implication was sharp enough to cut through glass. He swallowed hard. "My wife supports me." Victoria gave a soft laugh. "Support? Or hiding from your success?" Daniel stiffened. "Emily isn't like that." "Isn't she?" Victoria's voice slipped lower. "Quiet women often hold their husbands back without meaning to. They get comfortable. They ask you to be grateful instead of great." Her words dug into the small insecurities Daniel carried. Insecurities Emily always soothed. But tonight, under Victoria's careful poison, they twisted differently. He tried to ignore the discomfort creeping into his chest, but Victoria knew how to navigate weak points the way a surgeon navigates veins. She poured more whiskey into his glass. "Daniel," she said gently, "men with real ambition shouldn't settle for ordinary." The sentence vibrated through him. He took another sip. Too quick, too eager. For a moment, he remembered Emily's voice from months ago. "Some people only lift you up so you don't see how far they're about to drop you." He blinked, unsettled. Why did that line suddenly appear in his mind? Why now? Victoria watched his hesitation like she could read his thoughts. "Don't overthink," she whispered. "You deserve to be recognized, respected, elevated." Her words stroked the desire he rarely admitted. The desire to be somebody important, somebody admired. Emily's support always felt warm. Victoria's felt electrifying. And that was the problem. Victoria shifted closer, the distance between them shrinking until Daniel could smell her expensive perfume. Strong, intentional, controlling. "I choose my team carefully," she murmured. "I choose people with passion, loyalty, ambition." The lighting reflected in her eyes, making them look almost golden. Daniel felt frozen and drawn forward at the same time. Victoria moved her hand slowly, deliberately, placing it gently on his knee. His breath stopped. "A man like you," she whispered, "deserves a woman who matches your ambition." Her fingers curled slightly. Daniel didn't pull away. Not because he agreed, not because he wanted to betray Emily, but because the praise felt intoxicating, like he was finally being seen, noticed, valued at a level he'd never reached before. His silence was not a yes, but it wasn't a no, and Victoria always moved in the space between those two. Daniel's heart pounded loud enough to drown out reason itself. Victoria leaned even closer, her breath warm against his ear. "I can take you far, Daniel," she whispered, much farther than she ever could. The words left him stunned. Outside the glass walls, thunder cracked, not in the sky, but in Daniel's chest. For the first time, he wondered what farther truly meant and what it would cost. Victoria reached across the table and slid a sleek black folder toward him. "Come tomorrow," she said softly. "I have something to show you. We can also discuss you staying in the guest suite here for a while. It fits the image we're building." Daniel stared at the closed folder, unaware that opening it and accepting that offer would open the door to a betrayal he could never undo. The front door slammed against the wall so hard that one of the frames beside it tilted. The sound echoed down the quiet street outside. A few seconds later, the door jerked open again, this time not from wind, but from force. Daniel Parker dragged a packed suitcase across the floor and shoved it toward the doorway, the wheels scraping loudly against the wood. Anyone walking past the house could have heard it. Inside, the air was tight with tension. Emily stepped in from the hallway, eyes widening when she saw her luggage near the door. Her suitcase, already zipped, already full, already waiting. Her heart dropped. "Daniel," "What is this?" she asked, voice soft but trembling. He stood in the middle of the living room, wearing the suit he usually saved for big presentations. His tie was perfect. His hair was neat. But his eyes were cold. "I'm done, Emily," he said flatly. "I'm moving on to better things." The words cut through the room like a knife. Emily swallowed hard. "Better things? What does that even mean?" Daniel lifted his chin. "Victoria says I need to build a different image, a stronger one. She says having a wife who doesn't match my future isn't helping. She's offered me the guest suite in her penthouse for now. She wants me close to the center of things." He didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He just stood there, as if the woman who carried him through hard years had suddenly become a problem to solve. Outside the front window, a shadow moved. Mrs. Green, their elderly neighbor, paused with her hand on the mailbox, pretending to check letters she'd already collected. Two teenagers walked past, whispering and glancing at the house. A curtain across the street twitched as someone pulled it back an inch. People were watching, even if they pretended not to. Emily stared at the suitcase, then at him. This was the same man who once cried in her arms about his unstable childhood, about nights when he didn't know where he would sleep. The same man who had told her, years ago, "I just want someone who won't leave when things get hard." And now he was the one forcing someone out. She took a slow breath. "Daniel, I've stood by you through job rejections, debt, long nights, and stress. How am I holding you back?" Daniel looked away, jaw clenching. "You don't understand ambition. Victoria does. She sees what I can become. She says I look ridiculous coming from this neighborhood when I'm about to rise." "Victoria is your boss," Emily said quietly. "So?" he snapped. "She's powerful. She believes in me. She says I shouldn't live in a place like this when I could be in something bigger." He gestured around the small but clean living room, as if it offended him. Emily's chest ached, not because of the house, because of what he had become. "You're throwing away a marriage," she whispered, "because your boss told you this home, and I aren't good enough." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence was the answer. Emily reached for the suitcase handle. Her fingers shook, but she lifted it. As she pulled the suitcase outside, the cool evening air hit her face. The street was too quiet, too aware. Mrs. Green pretended to look at her flowers. The teens stopped pretending and openly stared now. A man walking his dog slowed down, eyes moving from Emily's suitcase to the limo parked at the curb. The sleek black limo, the one Victoria had sent. Emily heard the engine running, low and smooth. She didn't have to ask who it was for. Behind her, Daniel stepped onto the porch, adjusting his cufflinks like he was heading to an award ceremony. "Where am I supposed to go?" Emily asked, not accusing, just asking. "You'll manage," he said. "You're strong. You always figure things out." She let out a soft, broken laugh. "Just not strong enough to stand beside you in your new life, right?" He gave no answer. A driver in a black suit stepped out from the front seat of the limo and opened the rear door. Emily could see the leather interior, the soft glow of lights, the world Daniel wanted so badly to enter. "Daniel," she said quietly, "do you really think she cares about you the way I did?" He stiffened. For the briefest second, doubt flickered in his eyes. Then he shut it down. "Goodbye, Emily," he said. He walked past her, down the steps, and into the limo, right in front of the watching neighbors, who pretended to look away and failed. He didn't look back. Not once. The door closed with a low, final thud. The limo pulled away, leaving Emily standing on the step with her suitcase in a street full of silent witnesses. Mrs. Green finally spoke, voice gentle. "Do you need somewhere to stay tonight, dear?" Emily turned, eyes glassy but calm. "Thank you. I'll be fine." As she walked down the sidewalk with her suitcase rolling behind her, her phone buzzed in her hand. It was a new email. From Gregory. She opened it. "Board vote confirmed. Your CEO succession announcement is approved. Communications will request your final sign-off on the press release tomorrow." Emily stopped walking. Her tear stopped too. She lifted her head slowly, the weight of humiliation still heavy, but something stronger rising underneath. The neighbors would remember her as the woman who got kicked out. They had no idea she was about to become the woman who owned the world he was chasing, and neither did Daniel. Emily whispered to herself. One day he's going to walk into a room and see exactly who he threw away. The door to Hannah's apartment burst open with a force Emily didn't intend. Her best friend, Hannah Lewis, 33 years old, graphic designer, loyal and outspoken, rushed forward and grabbed Emily before she collapsed on the floor. Emily, what happened? Why are you shaking? Where's Daniel? Emily couldn't answer. Her breath came in short, quick bursts, as if her lungs were trying to keep her from breaking down completely. Hannah pulled her inside, locking the door behind them, eyes wide with shock. Talk to me, Hannah insisted. What did he do? Emily still wore the same clothes she had on when she left the office and then her home. Her work bag hung from her shoulder, strap twisted from how tightly she had been gripping it. Finally she spoke, voice thin and fragile. He told me to leave. He said I was holding him back. He said Victoria wants him. The last words came out like something poisonous. Hannah froze. Anger flashed in her eyes. He threw you out? For her? Emily nodded. The intensity of the moment cracked the air in the room. Hannah held her tighter, whispering, Emily, why aren't you fighting back? Why are you just walking away? Emily didn't answer right away. Instead, she sank onto the couch, her mind sinking with her. Everything felt too loud, yet oddly quiet inside her, like a storm just before the thunder. After minutes of silence, Emily finally whispered, My mother used to say something I never understood until now. Hannah sat beside her, waiting. Emily stared at her trembling hands. She always told me, never push back in anger. Let the truth fall naturally. It always does. Hannah sighed, frustrated but soft. So you're just waiting? No, Emily said, her tone shifting, the first hint of steel beneath the pain. I'm listening. She wiped her eyes, breathing slowly, grounding herself. Her world had cracked open, but she refused to fall through it. Later that night, after Hannah went to make tea, Emily unzipped her work bag and took out her laptop and folder. She wasn't looking for comfort. She was looking for answers. She needed noise to stop the silence in her mind. She needed truth to drown out Daniel's betrayal. She logged into her secure company portal using the two-step code sent to her phone, the same access Gregory and Thomas had given her for the CEO transition, the same system that tracked internal reports, expenses, and performance metrics. Her eyes scanned through reports, budgets, employee logs, documents she normally processed without emotion. But tonight, something sharp caught her attention. A performance report filed under Daniel's name. The numbers didn't make sense. Her chest tightened. She opened another report, this time connecting it with an expense sheet. Forged marks, altered data, transactions with unusual timing. Her heart pounded as she dug deeper, clicking through files with growing urgency. There it was, cold, undeniable. Daniel had inflated performance numbers to make his team look more profitable. He had misused a company credit card for private dinners and expensive drinks. He had emailed confidential documents directly to an external, private address, labeled under the contact name VH. Emily clicked the details. It was Victoria's personal, non-company email. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. This wasn't just unethical. This wasn't just careless. This was self-sabotage. And Victoria had let him do it, maybe even encouraged it, because men who compromise themselves are easier to control. Emily felt her grief twist into something else. Not anger, not hatred, clarity. She took her phone and, instead of downloading files that IT could flag, she snapped pictures. Every file, every timestamp, every detail. Her fingers were steady even though her heart wasn't. This wasn't revenge. This was truth. This was protection of herself, of the company, of everything Mr. Alden trusted her with. And Daniel had walked into the trap willingly. Just as she finished photographing the last document, her phone buzzed with a new email notification. From corporate communications. She opened it. Final approval has been granted for your succession announcement. Press an internal memo scheduled pending your confirmation of the date. Congratulations, Ms. Parker. Her quiet tears stopped. Emily looked up slowly, the soft glow from the laptop reflecting in her eyes. For the first time since leaving her home, she wasn't shaking. She wasn't lost. She wasn't breaking. She was awakening. Hannah returned with 2 cups of tea, unaware of the shift in Emily's eyes. What are you going to do now?" Emily answered quietly, almost too quietly. "Everything I was meant to." The moment the elevator doors slid open, the boardroom erupted in shocked movement. Chairs screeched, papers shifted, and every executive in the room stood up at once. The intensity hit like a wave, sharp, loud, electric. No one expected her to walk in like this. It had been only a few days since she left her home with a suitcase. Now Emily stepped inside with a calmness that felt colder than ice. Her hair was neatly pinned back. Her suit was sharp, clean, powerful. Her expression held no trace of the woman who had cried on a friend's couch. This was Emily Alden Parker, the woman the founder had personally chosen. Gregory Miles, senior board member, cleared his throat and stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our new CEO has arrived." A stunned silence swept through the room. Because until this moment, no one, not even middle management, knew who the next CEO would be. Certainly not Daniel. Certainly not Victoria. Emily walked to the head of the table, her heels tapping against the marble floor with steady rhythm. Every eye followed her. Shock, awe, confusion, respect. The room seemed to shrink around her. Gregory continued, voice firm and proud. "Effective immediately, Emily Parker will take over leadership of Alden Industries, following the succession plan approved by the board and our founder, Mr. Alden." Some executives gasped, some whispered, some clapped softly, uncertain but respectful. Emily gave a single nod. As the emotion in the room settled, Emily let her eyes sweep across the table. She saw faces she'd worked with for years, people who thought she was just another calm administrative presence. People who had no idea she'd been preparing for this silently, consistently, with the founder's full backing. She remembered Victoria's voice from days earlier. "The succession announcement will blindside them." At the time, Emily had believed Victoria was talking about Daniel, or maybe some other executive she planned to manipulate. But now she understood the truth. Victoria had no idea who the chosen successor was. No idea she'd been playing chess with the wrong opponent. No idea the quiet woman she dismissed was the one stepping into the role she wanted to control. Daniel thought he traded up, but he had traded everything away. Gregory motioned for her to speak. Emily placed her hands lightly on the table, her voice steady yet commanding. "I want to thank the board for their trust," she began. "This company deserves leadership built on integrity, not ambition alone." Several executives exchanged glances. They didn't miss the message hidden in her words. "I will be reviewing all recent department actions," Emily continued, "particularly in strategy and finance, to ensure every decision reflects our core values. This is standard during any leadership transition, and I expect everyone's cooperation." Her tone never rose. It didn't need to. Her power was in her calmness. Across the room, the HR director, Linda Harper, 49 years old, professional and organized, stood taking quiet notes. She looked up, curious to know the changes Emily had in mind. Emily looked at her and said clearly, "Linda?" "Yes, Ms. Parker?" Linda stepped forward. "Schedule a mandatory review meeting for tomorrow morning," Emily said. "Include department heads." She paused for half a second, then finished, "And Daniel Parker from Strategy." A ripple of shock rushed across the table. No one spoke. No one dared. Gregory lowered his eyes. He understood exactly what Emily was doing and why. It wasn't personal. It was necessary. Linda hesitated, but when Emily gave her a steady look, she nodded. "Of course. I'll send the notices today." Emily simply took her seat, signaling the start of the rest of the agenda. And just like that, the world Daniel abandoned her for was now in her hands. As the meeting ended, Emily gathered her documents. Her expression never changed, but her resolve hardened with every breath. When she stepped into the hallway, her phone vibrated. A message. From Victoria. 3 words. "We need to talk." Emily's eyes narrowed. She whispered to herself, "Yes, we do." The elevator doors opened with a loud metallic ding that echoed like a warning. Daniel stepped out with a confidence so big it nearly spilled into the hallway. He straightened his suit jacket, fixed his tie, and checked his reflection in the glass wall. Today was the day. Victoria had said she had plans for him. Big plans. Promotion-level plans. He smirked. Emily never believed I could rise this fast, but Victoria sees me. He pushed open the meeting room door, and his entire world froze, because sitting at the head of the table, in the highest seat of authority, was Emily, his wife, the same woman he shoved out of their home, the same woman he said was beneath his future. Emily sat straight, calm and unreadable. Her suit was sharper than everyone else's. Her presence filled the room without trying. Daniel swallowed hard. What is this? Victoria stood near the window, confusion flashing across her face. This was the first time she had seen Emily in that seat, and she did not like surprises she didn't control. Gregory Miles cleared his throat, his voice deep. Daniel, take a seat. Daniel sat slowly, feeling the room shift around him. His confidence drained. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. Something was wrong, very wrong. Linda Harper from HR sat with a thick folder. The company's legal officer, Thomas Reed, was also present. No one smiled. Victoria remained silent, watching. Daniel looked from face to face. Why were board members here? Why did HR look so serious? Why did no one congratulate him? Finally, he turned to Emily. Emily, why are you sitting there? Her expression didn't move. Her voice came out calm, smooth, controlled. Because this is my seat, Daniel. Gregory nodded. Effective immediately, Emily Parker is the new CEO of Alden Industries. The words shattered Daniel's posture. His back slumped. His lips parted soundlessly. Victoria stiffened, eyes widening. She had expected to guide or influence the next CEO, not find out she'd been working under her. Daniel stammered, You're the CEO? Emily folded her hands. This meeting isn't about titles, Daniel. It's about truth. Gregory gestured to Linda. HR will lead. Linda opened the folder with professional calm. Mr. Parker, this is a formal disciplinary and termination review. You were invited to respond to concerns about your recent conduct. You're aware this meeting is being recorded for legal purposes. Daniel's mouth went dry. Concern? What concern? Linda slid the first set of papers across the table toward him. First, she said, forged performance reports. These numbers do not match verified data in the system. You inflated your department's results. Daniel's face drained of color. That's not... I just corrected a few mistakes. Thomas spoke evenly. The changes were not corrections. They were falsifications. Emily said nothing, but her eyes didn't leave him. Linda continued, another set of documents. Second, improper use of the company credit card. Receipts for dinners, private outings, luxury drinks, most outside approved company events. Many of these coincide with nights you were recorded as being at Victoria Hale's penthouse. Daniel's throat closed. Those were strategy discussions. She said... Linda didn't respond. She flipped to the next page. Third, she said, voice colder now, unauthorized forwarding of confidential documents to an external, private email address, listed here as VH. She tapped the printed email logs. These emails contained internal projections, board prep analyses, and sensitive client data. Company policy strictly forbids sending such information to non-company domains without clearance. Daniel froze. Victoria's face turned stiff, angry, not at Emily, but at Daniel for exposing her through his carelessness. Emily finally spoke, her voice soft but clear. That address belongs to Victoria's personal email, not her corporate one. Silence hit the room like a slap. Thomas folded his hands. We will be conducting a separate internal review regarding any actions by senior leadership, including Ms. Hale. For today, the focus is your conduct, Mr. Parker. Victoria's jaw tightened, but she stayed quiet. She knew this wasn't the moment to defend herself. Linda turned another page. And finally, she said, you attempted to influence company decisions through personal relations with a senior executive. Multiple calendar entries and expenses line up with nights at Ms. Hale's penthouse. The pattern is clear. When she said personal, everyone understood the meaning. Daniel felt his confidence collapse into ashes. He pressed a hand to his forehead. Emily, please. This isn't what you think. Victoria said she was guiding me. Victoria took a small step away from the table, visually separating herself. You acted on your own, she said coolly. Your choices, your responsibility. He stared at her, shocked. Victoria, what? No, we were in this together. She didn't answer. She didn't even look at him. She simply chose her safety over him, like she had planned from the beginning. Emily's voice stayed calm. Too calm. Daniel, you should have asked me, before you chose someone else's future over our marriage. He inhaled sharply, pain hitting him all at once. Emily? I didn't know. You didn't tell me about any of this. I didn't know who you were. You never asked, she replied. Her voice wasn't cold. It wasn't cruel. It was honest. And honesty hurt more than anger ever could. HR Director Linda stood. Her voice was emotionless. Daniel Parker, due to documented violations of company policy and breach of data security, you are terminated effective immediately. Your access has already been revoked. Security will escort you out of the building. Daniel's knees buckled. He gripped the edge of the table as if the world had tilted. But, Emily, please, his voice cracked. Don't let them fire me. You're my wife. Emily looked at him, and for the first time, a flicker of sadness crossed her eyes. You made your choice, Daniel. The door opened behind him. Security stepped inside. Victoria turned away completely, staring out the window as if he already didn't exist. Daniel's breath shook. Emily, please, don't do this. Emily closed the folder in front of her, though Linda's remained open for the record. Leave the building, Daniel. He stared at her, broken. The man who kicked her out had nowhere to go. As security approached, Emily whispered to herself, This is only the beginning. The night air hit Daniel's face like a slap as he rushed out of the taxi, stumbling toward Victoria's penthouse. He didn't even wait for the car to stop fully before pushing the door open and running forward. He was shaking, angry, desperate, humiliated. He needed answers. He needed comfort. He needed Victoria to tell him this was all a misunderstanding. Ms. Hale invited me. She needs to talk. Move! Daniel snapped at the two guards standing outside the tall glass doors. But the guards didn't move. One of them lifted a hand, blocking his path. Mr. Parker, you're not allowed in the building. Daniel froze. What? I live here. Victoria, she instructed us not to let you in, the guard replied calmly. Your access card has been deactivated. The words hit him like a punch to the ribs. Deactivated, cut off, erased. He tried to laugh. That's impossible. She wouldn't. But the guard pressed a button. The elevator behind him opened, and a maid stepped out. She held a small box. The box Daniel kept his things in. A watch, a few clothes, a spare phone charger. She set it down gently in front of him. Ms. Hale said you should collect your belonging, the guard added. The world spun. Victoria hadn't just distanced herself. She had thrown him out too. The door closed behind the guards, locking him out completely. Daniel backed away slowly, his breath shaking, his pride collapsing like a weak foundation. He clutched the box to his chest. He felt 11 years old again, the day his mother's boyfriend tossed his clothes into the street, the day he stood alone while the door slammed in his face, the day he learned that the people he depended on always left. He thought Emily was different. He thought Victoria was different. But here he was again, alone with everything he owned in a cardboard box. He pulled out his phone. Calls to Victoria, blocked. Calls to Emily, declined. Calls to anyone at work, no answer. His heart pounded, wild and desperate. By the next afternoon, his panic had turned into frantic action. He stormed toward the parking garage where he kept the car he had proudly financed months earlier, eager to at least drive away from this mess. When he approached his car, he froze again. Two men in uniform stood by his vehicle, attaching clamps and scanning tags. Hey, that's my car, Daniel shouted. One man checked his tablet. Repossession order. 3 missed payments, Mr. Parker. Daniel's jaw dropped. Missed? What? No, I have money. He opened his banking app quickly. The screen loaded. Then his stomach twisted. Account restricted, temporary hold due to pending legal action. He tapped for details. A small note appeared. Court-ordered protective hold requested by legal counsel during asset review. Emily's lawyer, Her new reality as CEO meant their finances were under legal review. It wasn't spite, it was procedure. But to him, it felt like betrayal. His car was lifted onto the tow truck. The driver smirked at him. "Rough week, man?" Daniel felt the humiliation burn under his skin. He ran through every contact in his phone, every old coworker, every recruiter, every friend he once bragged to. No one called back. One old colleague finally responded with a text. "I heard what happened. Termination plus HR investigation plus rumors about you and Victoria. No company is touching you right now. Sorry, man." Daniel stared at the message for a long time. This is what he had become in their eyes, someone who used his boss, someone who sold himself for power, a risk. His reputation was gone. His future was gone. His marriage was gone. His boss was gone. He dropped into a bus stop seat, shaking. Later, with a few crumpled bills still in his pocket, he bought a small bottle of cheap liquor from the store near the bus stop, hands trembling. He took a long drink, the burn grounding him, but also pulling him deeper into panic. He remembered how his mother used to leave him alone for hours, how he would drink tap water and pretend it tasted like something sweet, something comforting. He remembered promising himself he would never be weak again, but now he couldn't even keep a place to sleep. He needed Emily. He needed someone to save him. He called her again. No answer. He called again. Straight to voicemail. His breathing cracked. "Emily, please, I don't know what to do." He sat there until sunrise, shivering, empty, and terrified. The next day, he went back to the apartment he shared with Emily before he threw her out. Maybe she had softened. Maybe she had left the door unlocked. Maybe there was still something left to save. But when he reached the door, he froze. A new lock. A notice taped to the door. Access revoked. Occupant removed from lease agreement, and in the hallway, a sad, lonely pile of bags. His bags, his clothes, his shoes, his documents, left by the wall like abandoned leftovers. The landlord stood by the door with crossed arms. The apartment was always in her name only. She showed us the court paperwork and the HR letters. "You can't stay here anymore." Daniel picked up a bag, hands trembling. His voice cracked. "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem," the landlord replied. The door shut. Daniel dropped to his knees on the cold ground. His world had collapsed one brick at a time. As he sat there shaking, a cold wind brushed across his neck. Somewhere deep inside him, a dangerous thought whispered, "Emily did this." He didn't know it yet, but he was about to make the biggest mistake of all. Months later, the courtroom door burst open with a force that startled everyone sitting inside. The bailiff stepped forward, trying to calm the sudden rush of footsteps. Daniel stumbled in, hair messy, suit wrinkled, face unshaven, eyes red from sleepless nights. His breathing was uneven, almost panicked. Everyone turned, but Emily didn't. She sat quietly at the petitioner's table, posture straight, hands folded neatly, eyes calm. She looked like the embodiment of peace, controlled, steady, resolute. The complete opposite of the man who once claimed she held him back. The intensity in the room was sharp, like glass under pressure. The judge glanced at Daniel's state and sighed. "Mr. Parker, please take your seat." Daniel sank down, ashamed, his shoulders hunched. The man who once walked with arrogance now looked like he had aged 10 years. Emily kept her eyes on the table, not in cruelty, but in closure. As the judge began reviewing the documents, Daniel's gaze never left Emily. He remembered the night he forced her out, the way she walked away with quiet dignity, the way he didn't even look back as Victoria's limo door closed. Now it was him being thrown out of everywhere. Now it was him nobody looked back for. Now it was him sitting on the edge of losing everything. His voice cracked softly. "Emily, please, can we talk before this starts?" Emily didn't turn her head. Her voice was composed. "We've already said everything we needed to, Daniel." "But I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know who you were. I didn't know you were becoming the CEO. I would have stayed." Emily closed her eyes for a small second, more tired than angry. "That," she said gently, "is exactly why I had to leave the marriage. You stayed for status, not love." His heart dropped into his stomach. The judge adjusted their glasses. We have reached the final review of the settlement. Emily nodded politely. Daniel swallowed hard. Mrs. Parker, the judge continued, you are granted the majority of the marital assets due to contributing more than 80% of the household income, demonstrating financial stability, and providing supporting documentation of your role in the company. Daniel looked down. Every number, every document, every timeline, it all proved he gave more excuses than effort. Furthermore, the judge added, given the internal investigation and termination of Mr. Parker from Alden Industries, you are legally protected from Daniel Parker's debts or financial liabilities, including any pending actions connected to his misuse of company resources. Daniel clenched his fists. Victoria had left him with more debt than pride. The judge signed the final document. This marriage is officially dissolved. The sound of the stamp echoed like a gunshot through Daniel's chest. Daniel pushed up from his chair suddenly, voice trembling. Emily, please, I have nothing left. His voice broke. Please don't leave me like this. Please, I don't have anyone. For the first time, Emily looked at him, and the courtroom went so quiet it felt like time paused. Her eyes weren't angry. They weren't cold. They were sad. Sad for who he could have been. Sad for who he chose to become. Sad for how easily he traded everything away. She walked toward him slowly, heels clicking softly, almost like a whisper. Daniel, she said quietly, you had everything. When you had me. His face twisted in pain. I never wanted to see you hurt, she added. But you made choices, and now you're living inside them. She stepped back, and with that, everything ended. Emily walked out of the courtroom into bright daylight. Reporters, executives, and employees waiting outside parted respectfully as she walked toward the company car. She stepped inside and was driven to Alden Industries. The moment she entered the building, employees rose to their feet, not out of fear, out of respect. She walked to her new office, the CEO suite, and took her seat at the desk that once belonged to Mr. Alden. The sunlight behind her made her look like someone who had fought quietly and won loudly. Meanwhile, Daniel sat on a bench outside the courthouse, head in his hands, staring at nothing. Just a suitcase. Just silence. Just the weight of every mistake he ever made. The wind blew lightly, lifting a strand of his hair. He chased power and lost everything. She stayed quiet and rose above them all. Emily's assistant knocked gently on the CEO office door. There's someone here to see you, Miss Parker. Emily looked up quietly. Send them in. The next chapter of her life was ready to begin. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.